Hey, beautiful. So I have been MIA, and I apologize for that, but not really. I've just been dealing with so much stuff on the home front, and it's been hard to just take a few moments for myself. Just my husband had surgery, and switching that nurse hat back on to make sure that he's okay while still taking care of my son, who's a toddler and dealing with his own issues. Has had really bad flare-ups of his eczema, along with other symptoms that have kind of just bubbled up at the same time that have literally all been leading back to his eczema and whatever he's reacting to. And so it's just been a lot of research and reaching out to people I know who have dealt with similar situations, trying to work with, our medical team while still listening to my natural mom instinct, and then combining all of that with my nurse background and just my knowing of, what's okay, and, things like that. What's kind of more, my big issue with medical, modern day medicine, Western medicine, is that medication and surgery are like always too far in that forefront. And that's what I appreciate about the Japanese community, in the sense that they're always trying to make sure that lifestyle and like holistic approaches are at the forefront in terms of like the first step to a lot of things when it makes sense, as opposed to going for like the worst case scenario and just giving medication or recommending like an invasive procedure to help with the situation. And so taking that and knowing that's kind of the provider that we have in terms of the pediatrician, I really kind of have my guard up when I have to go in for, pediatric care where we're at right now. And so I knew kind of beforehand that a lot of his symptoms were all related to this one thing. And so my natural instinct, even based with like my own medical problems, have always been to try not to just treat the symptoms, but let's find out what the root cause is, because then you're just masking the symptoms, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that I'm going to get better or that the situation is going to get better. It's still going to linger, it's still going to come up, or worse symptoms are going to arise because, again, you're not treating the base of the problem. So, a little just, my own 2 cents. If you're ever dealing with anything, to just kind of make sure that you are an advocate for yourself. If you're a parent, know that that's your responsibility to be that for your child, and don't just take what someone says. I understand that these are medical professionals. They went to school for a lot of this stuff, but they're called practitioners for a reason, meaning that they are practicing on real life people. And medicine is something that is always evolving. We're always learning. And you don't just graduate from med school knowing all. Like, it's not some magic pill that they give you where they all of a sudden you're just going to know everything. And I think that that in itself is something that people need to keep in mind. And I think for me, that's the main message that I really want to just give to you today, is that, we have maternal instincts and we have our own just intuition. And if it doesn't feel right, then there's no reason why you can't question, why you can't ask more questions, why you can't be allowed to better understand, so that you can make a more informed decision. At the end of the day, no one can do anything, no one can force you to do anything without you consenting first. And so, really just empowering people to take that into any medical situation, whether it's your prenatal care, your labor, your postpartum care, or your child's care. Take what they're giving you, listen, and then ask questions. Don't just be like, okay, well, they're doctors, they know the best, and do whatever they say. I always tell people, ask questions, like, be informed about your situation. If you're like, I don't know anything about this, say, thank you, is there anything you can give me to provide me with more information? They usually do. If not, then you need to try to find reputable medical places to look for more information to help you make a more informed decision. Because there's usually always more than one solution, and it just depends on your situation, obviously. But for my son, I understood a little bit about eczema as just in a whole. I had one of my really best friends, she was dealing with massive, like on a whole nother level of allergy problems with her daughters. And so I reached out to her because I knew she had already been through so much that I would, trust anything that she had in terms of recommendations. I asked her for resources on where she was getting her information or where she got a lot of her support and answers, because just modern day medicine was again just pushing steroids and medications and advanced stuff that she just wasn't comfortable with. So knowing that into the situation, I looked into it and I was like, look, at the end of the day, eczema is essentially just a bodily allergic response to something. And it's typically dietary, and it's traditionally one of three major things. It's not the only things, but it's the three major ones, which are eggs, dairy, or gluten. And so he's 2.5. I've never had to deal with not being able to not give him whatever he wants from a food standpoint. So this was going to be a really big shift for our family and for me as his primary like meal maker. So I chose to eliminate gluten first, just because it would be, one, the hardest to get rid of, and two, it's the most common one that typically this ends up flaring up from. And so I was like, if it's not gluten, that's great. But if it is, then it's the one that we can, start working on now, because it's probably going to be the one that takes me the longest to really get out of the system. Plus, it takes a really long time to get gluten out of your body, like 3 months before like all traces leave the body. So progression tends to be slow, and so forth and so forth. So that's what we went with. And I have to say, he's already showing really good signs of improvement, which has been a really positive just thing to notice. And his eczema is, the skin is now almost back to normal. There's occasional flare-ups when he eats something that I forget has flour in it. And I'm trying to just have fun with it and explore just alternative recipes to things that I know he loves. Bread's just such an easy thing to give and have on hand, like pancakes and muffins and things like that. Even, just ones that I would make from scratch at home. And now it's kind of a new learning curve, because anyone who's ever tried anything gluten-free, it's very hard to get the same texture and consistency that you would expect in like eggs. I mean, in like a traditional bread form. Like it's very mochi, like very chewy and not doughy, if that makes sense. So I've been trying to just be like, okay, let's just make the best of it. And I, because I'm still breastfeeding, have to be on the same diet as him, which isn't a terrible thing because it's just less cooking and less thinking on my part, and making the best of it. And to ultimately it's just seeing that he's getting better, which is like my thing, because we were in the emergency room. He was having these eye infections, these styes where they're popping up everywhere. His skin was getting really itchy. He was having all these other extra things, and the pediatrician did agree that it was all related to most likely his eczema. It wasn't 100% true, but most likely that was going to be the origin. And their reaction was like, why suffer through being gluten free when we can just draw his blood, and we'll be able to tell you in a few weeks. Just go ahead and start giving him gluten so that he's not on a gluten free diet when you take the test, and bada bing bada bang. And I'm like, that just doesn't feel right to me. Like, we're already 1 week in. Why don't I just continue it? And then if there's still a question, then yeah, maybe. But we've only been doing this for a week, and so I decided not to give him the steroids and went with a more natural solution. I was also recommended bleach baths, which I can't believe that that's being even recommended. Bleach is such a harsh chemical and can cause so many respiratory problems. They're equating it to the same amount of, of chemicals that are in a chlorinated pool, but putting a half a cup of bleach in my son's bath just did not sit right with me. So, anyways, I am super happy with just the way things have been turning out. I've been diligently doing my best with warm compresses and all the stuff that I know to do, and things are paying off in the long run. Yes, they have been taking twice as long, but I just feel so much better because I know that I can maintain what I'm doing, because there's no chemicals, no medication. I don't have to worry about getting refills and things like that. So I just wanted to come on here and just say hi, see how you're doing, know that I'm in the thick of it with you. And I really just wanted to just share my story so that you understand how much power you have, whether you're a patient or an advocate for someone who doesn't have a voice. I've been in the medical field for over 20 years. I started out in the medical field. I basically was a nurse turned entrepreneur, and I know that even when I was in the medical field, patient advocacy was very big to me. I myself became a patient of the medical field really early on in my 20s when I got diagnosed with two heart conditions. And it was just like, just take the pill. And I'm like, no, like, there's no indication why I should be having these heart problems. And I get that you can't find anything wrong with me yet, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing, like, there has to be a reason. And, they just kind of put me in this miscellaneous 6% of people in their 20s that just for no reason develop heart problems, and I just would not accept it. And they just were like, you just simple, just take the pill, it'll get rid of your hypertension and you just move on with your life. um, and so it was a really big struggle, and it took me like 15 years of just constantly listening to my body and telling them that there's something wrong, there's something going on, and nobody ever really listening and trying to help me get to the root of the problem, and just constantly pushing medication to just resolve the symptom, which is great to keep me alive, but I just continued to have recurring problems, and the medication kept having to be increased. as my problems internally started to just, manifest. And so eventually I figured out what the problem was, and it was a super simple solution. And so just take it from me. Listen to your gut. If it's telling you something's off, have the conversation with your doctor. Be your own advocate. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. There's nothing wrong for wanting to understand or get more information. And, there's always alternatives. They may not be the ones that they recommend, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the option to ask for something less invasive or ask for what are my other options. And if it doesn't still sound right, you still have the right to get a second opinion. Not everybody is going to have the right answers or the answers that align with you and your morals and your personal beliefs. And so I've definitely switched cardiologists because the cardiologist I originally had just was like, no, like I'm sorry, I'm just tired of having to fight with you on some basic stuff, that your answer is always medication, medication, medication. And so I went to a cardiologist that I had worked for previously, that I really respected, that I knew patients really loved because, well, I used to room them and get them ready for his appointments, and had a consultation with him, and knew from that first appointment that he was my doctor and that he was listening. And he was like, he's like, I kind of agree with this other doctor, but you're right. Like, it's really weird, and I'm on the same page as you. I'm curious. I want to see like what's going on, because this is a unique situation. And he looked further into it and started to notice that there was other things that I had going on that was making things for me hard. And it was a really great relationship, with me listening to my body and relaying what was going on, and then him helping me try to figure out what was going on the underline, while still encouraging me to just be safe, be on medication until we figured stuff out, which was something that I was more than willing to accept. So I hope this helps you, and I hope you're doing amazing. I know that I'm in the same journey with you, or that I've been in the same journey that you're currently in, if it's something that you're dealing with on a personal level. So inhale the peace, exhale the chaos, keep paddling forward, and I can't wait to see you or hear from you in the next episode.